Hey, everybody. It's Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. I speak today, Communications Network. I hope you all are doing well. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're safe. A lot of us sitting in some pretty nasty air just at the moment, thanks to all the horrible fires going on up there in Canada. Sending our best to anyone up there. Hey, listen, while we do this, why don't we go ahead and get started the way we always do? If you've been with us before, this seems familiar. If not, here's how it works. You see it on the screen, the two-word check-in. This is an idea that we borrowed from Professor Brene Brown down at the University of Houston. And the idea is you're going to put your name into the chat. You'll find that down there, a little button that says chat. Make sure it's talking to everyone, or it might say all panelists and attendees. And I'll model it for you. Hi, it's Sean in DC, happy and curious. So go ahead. Oh, here come folks right now. So go ahead, fire in your name in 2 words. How you doing? Peter, Vanya, and then where you at? Emmeline in DC eating lunch. Leslie, Dale, Rachel, Lisa, Christina, Shauna, Eunice, Vanya, Isabella, Morgan, oh man, okay, it's going too fast now. Suffice to say, I see a bunch of friendly faces, folks I know. It's lovely to see y'all. Again, hope everybody's doing well. Oh my, this is probably the part where I tell you all we got about 1,000 people who signed up for this joint today. So Chuck is clearly a popular man, and despite the rise of AI, we still all are called on to write, and we're always, I think, each one of us trying to get a little bit better at our craft. So if and as you see folks you know that you can, through the Zoom life we've all lived, you can DM people. So say hello to folks you know, or folks maybe you want to get to know. And in the meantime, as we go along, we're going to have a few interactive things that are going to be happening in the course of this. So be prepared to take a couple polls, and Chuck's going to probably call on a couple of you. So if you're feeling brave, be prepared to raise your hand. I'll call on a few of you, or we'll call on a few of you. We'll promote you up, so we'll be able to see your video and audio. That's going to be our one requirement. If you want to play, you're going to have to put on your video and audio, and then we'll let you work with us to try to edit a couple of items in here, see if we can make them tighter and a little bit more accurate, a little bit more compelling. All right, with that, let me go ahead and ask my colleagues in crime, Kareem Alston and Tristan Mahabir, who are running the deck behind the scenes here, to go ahead, and I'm going to do a little piece of housekeeping, and then we'll, as folks are coming into the room, and then we'll hand things over to Chuck. All right, so with that, first thing I need to tell you is, if you were among the 50% of the folks who have tickets for ComNet, we're 50% sold out. So literally about 500 folks now have seats. If you're among them, you're all set. We're excited to see you. I can't tell you how excited we are, because it's going to be an absolutely amazing experience when we're all together as the field gathers in Atlanta, September 20th through the 22nd. As a matter of fact, I'm headed down there just next week to do a little bit more planning and prep. But 50% of our seats are sold out, which means only 50% remain. If you're still on the fence, or maybe this has been on your to-do list, as for many of us, there's just lots of stuff piling up, please get on it. Inevitably, ComNet sells out. We have to put folks on what we call the dreaded wait list, and we don't want you to be one of them. So you're getting a heads up before we tell everybody else. Please, please, please get registered as soon as you can. My expectation is come July 4th or thereabouts, tickets will be gone. And usually we're able to sneak a few folks off the wait list, but last year we had 200 people sitting on the wait list for Seattle who just were never able to get in. We weren't able to accommodate them. All right, so with that, Gregory wants to know if this will be recorded and available later. Gregory, buddy, always, we record this. This will be posted up on YouTube. Give us, a few hours, or at the very least sometime tomorrow. Check out the network's YouTube channel. All right, with that, Kareem's already got me here because he wants me to hustle. We just launched a brand new, enhanced, improved comnetworkdei.org. This is something that we initially launched the end of 2019, something the network's been committed to for quite a while. Our core values include diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's a critical skill. If you want to be successful and effective as a communicator, you need to find ways to include everyone. Bunch of things you can do here to ensure that the communications you're developing and distributing, and even the ways that you're listening, are reflective of the wider world that we live in. All right, with that, let's move along. Next slide, please. Circles, again, hopefully something you all know about. We'll put this into the chat for you, comnetworkcircles.org. This is only for network members. I should probably note that, but these are groups of people who are gathering, and they're sort of communities of practice, I guess is the term of art that we use for these things. This is a way for folks to gather with folks who either have a similar job, maybe they work on a similar issue, or maybe they share an identity. But they've been hugely helpful to a whole bunch of folks. Think of it as sort of the kitchen cabinet inside the network for everyone. And so they meet regularly, both on Zoom monthly, and then they talk to each other across the course of a workday on Slack. And we're going to be adding a few in the coming months, but suffice to say, if that's something of interest to you, please do check that out. We'd be happy to have you if you are a network member. All right, moving forward. If you are not a network member, and especially if you are, but if you're not, you're welcome to go to this. These are the local groups that we have hosted around the country, and you can see those little markers telling you where they're gathering. We got one coming up. Maybe we can go ahead to that. Our friends in Denver, if I'm not mistaken, there we go, are having a happy hour coming up in just a few days. See all those friendly faces there. Why don't you go ahead and join them if you're in the Mountain West? And also our friends in Washington, who just hosted a fantastic event a little while back, are doing another one. That's next week, if I've got my timing right. And so please do make a point of getting together and joining with them. And again, eligible to everybody who's a network member, as well as folks who maybe are, as I suspect a few of you are, folks who are curious, but maybe not quite members, contributors to our community yet. Suffice to say, let's move along. I think I have one more for you. Yep, this is coming up, a webinar that we'll be doing. We'll send out an invite for this probably in the next couple of weeks, but this is coming up before too long. And with that, I think you can tell I'm blind here, gang. I have got the honor and privilege of passing it over to my good friend, Chuck Babington. Chuck's very, very, very modest, so I'm going to do a little bragging on him. Chuck is the former White House reporter. He followed presidents around for a living for both the Associated Press and the Washington Post. So he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience of writing on deadline, as we all do, with some very high stakes. He is also just one of the best writers and coolest humans that I know. So we are very, very grateful to welcome him back. Before I hand it to him, maybe y'all can join me in just offering up a round of applause or appreciation. Sorry, I just dropped my glasses here. To our friend Marva. Marva is offering ASL services. So if you have need of her help, you can pin her there. We'll have her up. You can also use the closed captioning. Chances are y'all know how to find it. Oh, that's nice. Look at that. Even a few hearts for Marva. Right on. All right, gang, let me shut up. I will see you on the other side. Wait a minute. One more thing I got to tell you, and that is we will host office hours. So if you come in with a question and maybe we don't get to it in the course of the presentation, please do. If you can make the time, we're going to have about 30 minutes after this all wraps up for Chuck to take questions for me directly. We will share a link in the chat. That's where you'll go and look for it. You'll meet us over there, and we'll be happy to take as many questions as we can over the course of a 30-minute or so office hour session. All right, with that, Mr. Babington, over to you, sir.
All righty. Well, thank you, all of you, for having me. I've done a similar webinar with ComNet several years ago, and I enjoyed it. So it's nice to be asked back. We'll try to cover a lot of things in a pretty short amount of time. I'll try not to go too fast. Everything that we talk about today will apply to every type of professional writing, be it from tweets to emails to op-eds to memos to reports to letters. So this will apply to all those types of writing. Anything that I say today that doesn't make sense to you, you can ignore it. At the end of the day, it's your writing. So these are largely suggestions. So one thing I'd like to do is just let's do a quick poll. What's the hardest for you? What is the hardest part of the whole writing process? If you could wave a magic wand and make one thing easier, what would that one thing be? We put some options there that I tend to get fairly often when I ask this question. I'd be happy for people to fill in the other, but this will help us. It gives an idea of what types of challenges you feel are the toughest challenges. Slightly more than a third of you said getting started was the hardest part. Being concise, 17%, deciding which details to include and exclude, 23%, almost a quarter. Coping with varying opinions and styles in your organization, about 1 out of 5, 21%. So these are, there are others, but these are the types of things that you have lots of company. Every organization, every professional organization I go to, be nonprofit, for-profit, big, small, these are some of the biggest issues they deal with. So we're going to talk about these and some other things. So thank you for participating in that. One of the hardest things about getting started with writing is sometimes we don't think too clearly about who we write for. So let me ask you, when you sit down to write something in a professional setting, who do you write for? Let me suggest that these 4 options here might not be the best option, the best choice, although I do hear these a lot. Because you know a lot of things, you care deeply about what you are writing about, you tend to think, I've got all this knowledge, I want to make sure I get it out there. I would suggest you turn that telescope around and focus on the reader. You are writing for the reader. If you don't engage that busy reader then you will not, that reader has way too many other things to do, and he or she is just going to move on to something else, and you're going to lose the reader, and then you've lost all your time and effort. So be conscious of, instead of trying to unload all the great stuff in your brain, try to think about what does that busy reader need, and what's the minimum that person needs. So they're busy. They have more to read than they have time to read. So they need to know quickly, why should I care about this? You've got a pretty good chance of clearing that hurdle because you're writing for a certain audience. But what's your point? Do not make your reader guess or take a long time to understand what's your main point. You can embellish it. You can put the details and all that later, but get to your main point. So whenever I send something, I try to use, if you're sending an email, use that subject line, not to just say, here's my thoughts on project X, but say, we need to pump more money into project X, and whatever your main point is, try to use that subject line for that. If you're asking someone for a decision, put it in the subject line. Your decision, please, on this topic, or at least in the first sentence of the email itself. Don't wait till 6 paragraphs later to say, oh, by the way, I'd like your decision on this. Don't leave that busy reader guessing. They might have to bail out before they get to the 6th paragraph. Generally, it's tempting to, because we live our lives chronologically, to write chronologically. This happened, and this happened, this happened. Generally, that's not the best way to go. So suppose your boss said, stop everything you're doing for 2 weeks and study whether we should change IT vendors. You're going to work your butt off. You're going to learn all this stuff, and you're going to be tempted to write, dear boss, I spent all this time studying, and I learned all this, and I talked to all these people. And then the 18th paragraph, you say, I've concluded we should change IT vendors. If I were you, I would say in the subject line of that memo to my boss, we should change IT vendors. Here's why. And then you explain all the great stuff you've learned. So you want to put your main point up there really fast for that busy reader. I say, put the news first. I'm not trying to turn you all into journalists, but it helps to think like a journalist. If a reporter goes to a meeting or a convention or something, that reporter, if they're going to keep their job, they're going to have to find something that's interesting, that hopefully is important and matters, to put at the top, to try to engage that reader. And you can put the details and the quotes and other things later. So I can't tell you how many press releases I got in my 36 years as a reporter, but I got a lot of them. And a lot of them started like this one on your left. There's been a new report released, and then you have the inevitable quote from the CEO that's almost never going to be used. So releasing a report is not news, and the busy reporter and editor like I was is probably not going to read any further in this because you haven't told them why they should be interested. But if you look at that on the right, that's news. That type of, whatever your report, whatever the main thing of that you were trying to get across in this press release. Remember, another name for press release is news release. So put the news at the top. By golly, I don't care how important, busy I am as an editor or reporter, I'm going to read that because that's darned interesting. So one reason that we often have trouble getting started, and this was the case with me very often, I'd have what I thought was a good story, but I just couldn't get started writing it. I always realized that I had not decided exactly what the one main thing I wanted to say. Until you boil it down, distill it to the one main thing you want to say, your main topic, you're not going to be able to write well. So you should be able to distill that to one simple sentence, a topic sentence. It's a great way to get started. Just write that simple, we should put more money into project X. We need to hire more people with a certain type of background. You're going to come back, and when you edit and rewrite, you're going to change it and make it better, but that'll get you started. If you don't know exactly what you want to say, you're not going to be able to write well. Acronyms, jargon, generally they are impediments to the reader. If you're writing something for a very closed audience that everybody knows what that acronym is, everyone knows that jargon, you can do that. But if you have the thought that anyone outside that tight circle might read this, and I always say write for as big an audience as you can, do not use those acronyms, do not use that jargon. They won't understand what you mean. It'll frustrate them and they'll move on. Generally speaking, people that you write for are not as steeped in and not care as much about your topic as you do. That's understandable, but we tend to forget that. Every profession does. All right. So the next main tip I would give you is to write in a natural tone, a conversational, colloquial tone. So you wouldn't say, if you were talking to your mom at the kitchen table, you wouldn't say, we're experiencing precipitation and I failed to remember to secure the entrance. Can I have a volunteer to turn on your mic and just tell everybody how you would say that information in just a simple conversational tone? Do I have a volunteer?
All right, gang, if you're willing to be brave. Oh, I see a few folks here. How about Jennifer Johnson? Would you mind firing up your camera and your microphone? I'm going to assume, gang, you type them in. I'm going to pick on you. So Jennifer Johnson, fire up your camera and your microphone, please.
Okay.
There you are. Well,
Yeah,
there's a family photo. Y'all look great.
Thank
Where
you.
you at? Is that New York?
No, San Francisco.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I just said it's raining and I forgot to close the door.
Chuck,
Perfect.
what do we think?
I think it's perfect. I hope everybody heard Jennifer. It's raining and I forgot to close the door. It's exactly how you would say it if you were talking to a friend or your mom. That's how you want to write. Writing should not, some people think writing needs to sound different from conversation, that it needs to sound more important, more academic, more puffed up. No, it doesn't. It should sound simple and plain and straightforward. And you convey the knowledge that you have through the points that you make, not through using big words like precipitation when it's 70 degrees and there's water falling from the sky. It's just rain. So use this good, simple conversational tone. We hear
Chuck,
a lot of bad
before
stuff.
you go, can I interrupt real quick, Chuck?
Please do.
Why do folks seem to, particularly professionally, use $75 words? Like in your experience, you've seen a lot of these. Do you have any theory about what's going on there?
I think part of it is in college, we too often have professors who are very, very smart, but are not good writers. Sometimes they're terrible writers. Often we're reading their textbook, which is terribly written. And there's just not enough people in the college setting to say this isn't good writing. So generally speaking, the professors, unless they're English professors, are all the other subjects, they didn't get their job because they're great writers, mainly because they're great researchers and thinkers. So I think a lot of it comes out of college. One of the worst things is you have to write a minimum of 5 pages, and you only have 3 pages of material. And please don't ever do that. Padding is the worst thing you can do. So Sean, and then I think sometimes we get to organizations, and there are a few kind of show-offs in the organization who think this is the right way to write, and so the younger people think, well, I guess that is the right way to write, and that's a tragedy. So I want you to please try to be more aware of this sort of academic, puffed up type of writing, and then don't do it. We hear a lot of it. We hear a lot of it on TV, especially unscripted things like sports or weather. The weather reports drive me crazy. Precipitation is possible. Well, rain or snow, just say which it is. They're utilizing the 2-3 zone. I hear that type of talk in sports shows all the time. No, please. They're just using the 2-3 zone. So these types of, I'll just go back a second, you're walking through the airport. This is your last and final boarding call. You hear that so many times, you stop thinking about how silly it is. It's either the last or final. Just pick one. Don't write that way. So you can write like this. A lot of people do, or you can write like this. All the information that's in this is in this, and that's how you would talk if you were talking with a friend by their cubicle, right? So that's the way you want to write. So short, simple words are best. Even I just try to attempt. Nothing wrong with that word. If it's 2 syllables, it means try. Why not use a 1-syllable word? There's nothing wrong with approximately. I've used it, but it's 5 syllables, and about and roughly mean the same thing, and they're 2 syllables. I'd go with them. Please do not use the word utilize. It means use. It does not mean anything else. I promise you. Why take a perfectly good 3 letters, 1-syllable word and puff it up into a 3-syllable word with the IZE sound. It does not make you sound smarter, does not make your organization sound smarter. I'm happy to have people argue with me, and maybe you can do that either now or during the Q&A. I'm happy to discuss. It's my least favorite word, and all the other words that are like that, the puffed up words. So Mark Twain said, I never use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do. Sean Gibbons said, let's inflate that to $100 versus a nickel. All right, fine with me. But, you know, these kind of pretentious words, like, and a lot of them become fads, you know, fraught. You can't read a news story these days without the word fraught. It just means complex or troublesome. Price points, that's a fad. They're just prices. It's just prices. I'm seeing the word cadence a lot. That seems to be a really trendy word now. It just means pace or tempo and scale. I don't know any professional organization that doesn't love the word scale and scaling. 9 times out of 10, they mean enlarging or expanding. If you just mean expand or enlarge, then write it that way. If you were talking to a friend, you wouldn't say, I hope to scale my child's Little League program. You'd say, no, I hope to expand their Little League program, right? That's how you'd say it in a natural conversation. That's how you should write it. All right. You guys are getting the idea, so I won't. As you go through your writing or someone else's writing as an editor, you can take something like this and you can shorten it and choose better words. So in Paris, I plan to use my savings to buy a house for about $300,000. You see how every one of those words that I changed or phrases is shorter, more succinct, simpler, more conversational. So good writing is not stilted. And I think that's probably the best word to describe this type of academic puffed up standard writing. A good rule of thumb is if you find yourself writing something that if you said out loud over coffee with a friend or your mom at the kitchen table, ding, 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 that should be a warning to you. Don't write it that way. I don't know any organization, at least in Washington, where they have the bios of their staff, wonderful people, and they always say, prior to joining our firm, Jan resided in Texas. Okay, it's not a crime to write that, but if Jan had just joined your organization and you were chatting with her by the water cooler, and if you said, hi, Jan, where were you before? If Jan said, prior to joining our firm, I resided in Texas, you think, man, why is she talking so weird? Because it is weird. She wouldn't say that. She'd say, before I came here, I lived in Texas, right? So you could change all of those thumbnail bios to before joining our firm, Jan lived in Texas, or Jan lived in Texas before joining our firm. I promise you, no one will say, this organization must not be very smart or sophisticated because they don't use the term prior to and resided. No one will say that. If I had my way this afternoon, everyone would go back to their staff section of their website and change all these to before and live, but I can dream, can't I? You see how it's just a simpler way. Now, this sentence here came from a Fortune 500 company off their website. So take a minute to read that. And I say, to use our test, suppose you were at a dinner party and the person next to you said this out loud, or said, so I think every conversation at that party would stop and every jaw would drop because, like, what the hell is this person talking about? This is nonsense. This is gibberish. This is terrible writing. They're trying to show off. And it is, I hope some of you laughed because it's laughable. It's a tragedy.
It hurts to read.
What's that?
It hurts to read.
It hurts your head to read. I think it's a tragedy that this organization, I always say, stand up for good writing. It's unfortunate that someone at that organization or company didn't say, time out, let's get this off our website. This is not the way we write. We can do better. Don't let anybody convince you that this type of writing with all those big multi-syllable words is a good way to write. You'll find a lot of it. Here's one that might even be worse, again, from some big company. I say, if you suppose you said this at a bar, you'd duck because you'd probably get punched in the face for talking like this, right? It's got all these buzzwords, optimizers, maximize isn't the worst word, scale, efficiencies, commercial value optimize. I love the very end of this. In order to receive favorable reimbursement from payers, what they mean is get paid. have your client pay you. Why don't you just say that? In order to get paid by the people that owe us money. That's just,
you got it, Rebecca. Actually, a few of them are pulling the thing that we talked about in the rehearsal, Chuck. How many folks think productize? You can put this in the chat. How many folks think the word productize is a word? Yeah. Nope, not a word. It is not. Look it up. Webster's, find whatever dictionary you like. That is not a word. So, Chuck, if it's not a word, who makes this shit up?
You got me. The people who write things like this and think, and tragically, I think maybe there's a young intern or newly hired person out of college that goes to this firm and sees this stuff and thinks, gee, I guess that's how we're supposed to write. That would be a true tragedy. I don't know. I don't know why this stuff shows up so often. But all of you are smart.
Gail just said this is a great Scrabble word. And Gail, I'll say if we're playing, I'm going to challenge that one.
Absolutely.
But you could win the game with that word potentially. Let's have triple word score all over it. Unfortunately,
differentiation. That'd be a great Scrabble word. All right, you get my point. Some people tell me, Chuck, we have to write. Our company makes us write this way. It's the marketing team that thinks. Look. I wouldn't argue you should ever do something that will cost you your job. If you absolutely have to write with some of this, please don't write as bad as that, but use some of these buzzy words. Just be aware when you write anything else, that's not what you want to do. Don't let that seep into your consciousness, into your writing style. So if you write an op-ed or a job application or a report or anything that you care about, do not write that way. And don't let that influence, don't let people telling you that we want to use all these buzzy marketing words. Try to talk them out of it if you can, but if you can't for the marketing applications, then don't do it anywhere else. Sometimes people say, well, Chuck, you're trying to get us to dumb down our writing, especially more sort of scientific, research-based people. It is not dumbing down. I despise that term. It is not dumbing down to make something that you're writing about accessible to the average reader, to use short, simple explanations, active voice, briefly explain these issues. There are many great writers who write about science and complicated issues who are wonderful writers. Carl Sagan, Rachel Carson, Carl Zimmer, Oliver Sacks, there's many others. It is hard work to make complicated things look easy, but they do it. It can be done. Please don't ever let someone tell you that you're dumbing down their writing by making it more accessible to the average reader. I'm happy to discuss that during the Q&A. All right. We've heard it, and a lot of times we don't do it. We write in passive voice instead of active voice, which has more oomph, right? It's obvious. The Allies won the war, right? Because you're putting the doer of the action first, and you're using a nice strong verb, in this case, won. So passive voice puts the doer of the action either late at the end or they're not there at all. So the effort was led by Marty. You can tell that's weak. You have to have a helping verb, a weak helping verb, very often a form of the to be verb. So was led by Marty. Marty led the effort, right? Nice strong verb, shorter, simpler, more straightforward. If your little son or daughter was excited, they would not run into the kitchen and say, "Mother, the game was won by the Nationals." No, they'd say, "Mom, the Nats won." Why does that child has no idea what passive voice or active voice is. They don't care. They automatically speak in active voice because they're real human beings speaking with real human emotions. And that's how you want to write. Here in Washington, we fairly often hear mistakes were made by some government official Why do they do that? Classic, it's the ultimate passive voice phrase, right? They want to hide who made the mistake. And so in this case, they don't even put the doer of the action later. They just get rid of that person at all. So they don't have to say who made the mistake, probably their boss. Write in active voice whenever you can, put the doer of the action first. All right. Another great way, we talked about being concise. George Orwell said, if you can cut a word out, always cut it out. This blew my mind when I was about 20 years old, trying to get started as a decent writer. Maybe I was 22. And I was like, always cut it out every single time. And I said, by golly, I'm going to take this as a challenge. I'm going to do this. And it made me a better writer. It helped me get a foothold in the newspaper business, which is very competitive. When you start looking for words to cut, you'll be amazed how many words you can cut. Seek and ye shall find. So I was editing something for a magazine, sentence 1 there, and they had this. In the event you have any questions, please visit our website. I changed it to questions, see website. All the information is there. I worked in an office that had a community calendar, and the woman who ran that community calendar was named Margaret Balcom, and she'd get lots of, there's a bake sale, there's going to be a dance recital, there's going to be a lecture, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of these notices say, the meeting will be open to the public. There'll be no admission charge. Take place Thursday. Every time Margaret got one of these, she changed it to Thursday's free public meeting. All the information that's in that first 2 sentences there is in the 4 words that she changed it to. A marvel of economy. I honor her to this day. The point being, when you start looking for words to cut, you can find a lot of words to cut. Seek and you shall find. We didn't get the strike through on somehow. The up is supposed to be struck through, so you can't raise anything any way other than up. So you could strike the up. All results are at the end. If you look next to last, when I was editing something, again, it was a thumbnail biography of someone, and they said originally she was born in Greenville. Well, you can't be born any other way than originally. I think what happened is at the top they were talking about this person's college education and credentials, and then they wanted to go back to the beginning of her life, and they thought they had to have a transition. No, you don't need a transition. She was born in Greenville. The reader gets it. You don't need to throw in a word like originally. Left-hand corner is no different from left shoulder, left hip, left knee. You don't need it. Left corner. We hear these phrases all our lives, and we stop thinking about how unnecessary they are. All right, let's take a few minutes, everyone, please. This is a paragraph from a court document. Pretty typical type of writing that you see. It's not abhorrent. It's grammatical, but it's kind of wordy and kind of flabby. Take a few minutes. I want you to, on your laptop or with a piece of paper or just in your head, think about some ways that you could cut this without losing facts. So let's just wait a few minutes and let people work on that.
And gang, while you're doing that, Chuck, I think the plan is we're going to call somebody out to join us by video and audio to read out what they did, and
I would love that.
See how they did. All right, gang. Chuck, while folks are working on this, a question came through that's maybe worth bringing back to you on passive voice. Mm-hmm. That passive voice often shows up in crisis communications. To your point, mistakes were made. Right. But is that a hard and fast rule? If you're in some sort of crisis situation, do you want to be writing in passive voice, or in your experience, because you've certainly been on the other end of that, reporting someone did something they shouldn't have done?
Anytime I see passive voice like that, you can tell it's being used as an escape. I had a client one time, she raised her hand and said, Chuck, sometimes we have to write that mistakes were made because our client doesn't want to own up to the mistakes. So I said, great, your client signs your paycheck, so rock on, but at least be aware of what you're doing. Generally speaking, sometimes, it's hard to say exactly who the doer of the action is. For example, the patient, this is in medical writing, the patient was intubated. The patient was taken to the ER. So, you don't know necessarily whether the doctor or the nurse or the PA intubated the patient. I once had to edit a big medical document and it was full of passive voice. And when I could, I would change that to the medical team intubated the patient. There has to be a doer, even if you don't know exactly who it was. Did some passive voice slip through? Yeah, but as much as you can, put it in an active voice. police reports. The suspect was apprehended. We arrested the suspect. Your team did it. The sheriff did it. Or they just want to write in this passive voice because they think it sounds somehow more, I don't know, authoritative, but it doesn't. All that could be changed to active voice, and it would be cleaner, better, stronger writing. All right. I will say right here, I think this is a hard one. I use this example because it's not easy, especially that second sentence is not easy. Sean, can we have a volunteer?
Yeah, Robin Sawyer, I'm going to pick on you. I'm assuming you're volunteering because you stuck it in the chat and folks are giving you some props there. So Robin, if you don't mind, if you'll pop open your camera and your microphone, you can read out to everybody what you did, what you came up with.
Hi, let me pull that back up.
Robin, I can't see you just now. If you don't mind firing up the camera, if that's okay with you.
I wasn't prepared to be on camera.
All right, then keep it off. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, all good, all good. Listen,
Okay.
I just did my hair before I got on. I know how it is.
I wrote Diana earned a GED and worked as a dog groomer and apartment complex manager in Oklahoma before marrying Bruce. And I misspelled Bruce. My apologies.
I hope
Thank you,
everybody
Chuck.
heard what Rob. Sean, you want to do another one, or I think we can. Let me tell you,
Peter Daniels. Why don't you, if you don't mind too terribly, if you don't mind firing up your camera and your microphone. Again, I know I'm calling on folks here, so if y'all are prepared to do that, that's cool.
Hey guys, I'm here. I hit the button and then it.
Hey Peter, do you mind terribly firing up your camera? Are you in a position to do that?
Sure, why not? Okay. Hey, how's it going?
I can turn my camera on as well.
Right on. All right. So Peter and then Marlon. Thank you both, guys. All right, Peter.
So Diana had different jobs before marrying Bruce, including dog grooming and managing an Oklahoma apartment complex. She stayed in high school through her sophomore year and eventually got her GED. And I didn't want to assume that the dog grooming job was in Oklahoma, so I kind of kept that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's good because you don't know that. Good.
Right on. Marlon, how about you?
Before her marriage, Diana had a few different jobs, including dog grooming and managing an apartment complex. Diana completed 10th grade and got her GED afterwards.
Good.
I really want to cut out the extra information. I felt like knowing where she lives wasn't important to the overall sentence. I didn't necessarily like how I structured her education experience, but I felt that was important to include anyway. So just kind of sandwich it together and put it in there.
I'll tell you, you guys both did this in about 30 seconds. That's not bad because chances are you're going to look at it a couple times before it goes out. So that's pretty darn good for 20, 30 seconds worth of work. Chuck, what do you think?
Yeah. Kudos to all of you. I think all of you changed the whether you put it first or not. I like that, Robin, and I think Peter too. All of you, or at least two of you, took the liberty of changing the order. That's perfectly fine. You did the jobs. You could put that in any order you like. I think all of you saw that before marrying Bruce, right? Right there, you say you get rid of that prior to. You use marriage in its verb form. Before marrying Bruce, you save several words there. I think all of you understood that employment positions is a kind of stupid way of saying jobs. Just call them jobs. Held a variety of several, and I think all of you. One thing that makes this sentence awkward and difficult is it's not parallel, right? You've got dog grooming and manager of an apartment, and I think all of you changed it either to grooming and managing or groomer and manager, making it parallel, more elegant, easier to read. I think that second sentence, and I never had an easy time dealing with that, but I think all of you managed to tighten that. So good work. Seeking you shall find. When you seek words to cut, you start seeing things like prior to her marriage, variety of employment positions. The second sentence is wordy, so you can do it. When you start looking for words to cut, you'll write more. You can get rid of unneeded words and save more room for the really important stuff.
And you know what, Chuck? Our friend Anita actually made a point here. She's up in Canada, and she said, we don't know what a GED is in Canada, so there's some jargon. And sophomore is not what they refer to a person who's in their second year of high school or upper school. I actually don't know what y'all call it in Canada.
There you go.
There you go. We got caught.
Acronyms, and now you're writing for an international audience. Yeah, I like that. Very good point. Very good point. GED.
What does GED mean? Because it's not great education diploma, which is a good guess.
I used to know. Now I'd have to look it up.
General educational development is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. All right. Nicely done. Very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. So a lot of people tell me, Chuck, I'm so busy that when I finish writing something or finish a draft, I just hit the send button because I have too many other things. I got to get to the next things. I don't have time to edit it, rewrite it. And I say, no, you cannot do that. I will not accept that excuse. You have to go back through it. You have to find time. I don't care if you have to miss your next meeting or work late at night or work on Saturday. It's not an excuse to say I'm too busy to go back through and edit and rewrite and edit and rewrite. Every good writer goes through his or her writing multiple times. I promise you, you will find typos because you're a human being. All humans make typos, little mistakes. You're going to go through it and you're going to find sentences that are too long that you can break into 2 or even 3 that are more digestible for that busy reader. You're going to find passive voice that, oh, this is passive voice. I can change this to active voice. You're going to find quite possibly some factual errors, which you really don't want to get in there. So every time you go through your writing, it's going to be better. Please make that a priority. If you don't, you might end up with something like this. Actually, this is kind of sad. You can tell that love and money went into this very nice headstone. I don't know who the Y-O-U-R, of course, should be apostrophe R-E. I'm guessing whoever wrote this is probably a smart, educated person. They just made a mistake. They made a mistake and no one caught the mistake. That's the tragedy. And now it's literally written in stone. So it's easy to make mistakes. Everybody does it. You want to go through and find your mistakes and get them out of there. Always have anything you care about, a writing product, have someone read it before you send it to your client or your boss or whatever. Do not hit send without having someone else read it. I'm lucky my wife's a good editor. She reads everything I write and vice versa. I would suggest you have a buddy system, maybe a colleague, and I'll edit everything you write and vice versa. We'll be buddies, we'll help each other. But it doesn't have to be someone at work. It can be someone at home. When my children were in high school, sometimes I'd have them read something. They were excellent editors because they're smart and they came to it with a fresh eye. And I was like, wow, you really made a good point there. Have someone read behind you. Another great thing to do is read your copy out loud. Close the door to your little cubicle or office or whatever and read it out loud. You'll hear things that you didn't see. You'll catch mistakes. Precision matters. Whatever you think of Google as a company, these search engines are wonderful machines. Stationary or stationary, spelled 2 ways, same with principal. I used to have the devil of a time with dessert. It takes about 3, maybe 4 seconds to look it up. Affect or effect. Brookings Institute or Brookings Institution, which is it? I ask this question all the time. Generally, half the class doesn't know. It's institution. It's not a crime to say or write institute. People do it, but it's wrong. And somebody who reads your writing will know that it's wrong and will think, this writer's not terribly careful. And all it would have taken you was 4 seconds to type Brookings into Google, and it's going to come up institution. Smithsonian, institution, not institute. So you take these little short, are you sure that's the capital of that state? Look it up. It'll only take you a few seconds. Precision matters. All righty. One other thing that your good writing should have is you. Some people, if they write, they think, I better be careful. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to come off too strong. And they make it sort of anodyne and vanilla. Don't do that. People want to read someone who knows what they're talking about, who cares what they're talking about, and writes with enthusiasm. So you want to put your spirit into it, your convictions. I even say put your joy into it, your energy. You want to write with verve and muscle and energy. If you're not sure about what you're saying, then don't say it. Go do something else. Don't write it. But if you believe in what you're writing, then write it like you believe it, and convince that busy reader, hey, this person knows what she's talking about. This is pretty darn interesting. Artificial intelligence, and maybe we can have more discussion about this in the office hours. I don't have a ton of experience with it. A couple of observations is it seems like it's really helpful in doing kind of boilerplate, rote type of writing. And if so, seems to me, why not? If it can speed things up and get you off to a good start, that's great. I would be careful not to use any language from anybody, including a robot, that's not yours without acknowledging, some of this comes from whatever, the encyclopedia and AI or whatever. The way that AI works for writing is that for each word, it predicts what would be the most often used next word. That's how it does it. So really, what it is in a way is very average. This is the most frequent way that people write about this. If you're trying to write an op-ed or a letter or something, I would aspire to be better than average. So I would hope that using your good brains and your good energy, you can write something that would be better than what AI could give you. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that it's doable. So just to sum it up, you want to write in a natural, non-puffed up, non-academic tone. Write in active voice whenever you can. Cut every word you can. You'll find zillions of words you can cut. Make your main point quickly. Don't leave that busy reader guessing what you're trying to get at. You're going to edit and rewrite and edit. And when in doubt, Google it. It only takes a few seconds. So, Sean, maybe we still got a little time left. Maybe I raced it faster than I should have. But
you did. We got a bunch of questions. So I'm going to grab a couple, and I'll just, in the spirit of time, read these out loud, or as many as I can. Gang, if you'd like, y'all know this probably, in the Q&A section, you can go in there and vote. That might help me figure out which ones are the most relevant. So we'll toss in a couple here, and then we'll go over to office hours for those who can make the time to join us. All right. Any advice? This is a good one. Any advice to write clearly when English is not your first language?
My heart and head go out to all those who are writing in English and it's not their first language. I admire the people who can do that. The only thing I know is just keep reading good English, keep studying. If you have a tutor, keep going to that tutor, and err on the side of keeping things simple. Don't try to make the sentences complicated. Don't try to make the structure complicated. Try to strip it down, short, straightforward. Nobody's going to think that you're not smart by making it simple. They're going to appreciate it as a reader. So I think sometimes we get into long sentences and complicated organization, and then we get lost. So I would try to strip it down and keep it at its most fundamental and basic structure as I could.
Question comes from Chidera. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Can you sound formal and natural at the same time?
Well, yes, I think so. You don't want to write like, hey, bro, what's going up? You're not going to write that way. You can, but you could say, dear Ms. Jones, I appreciated the letter you sent me, and here are my thoughts. Boom, boom, boom. So I think that has a kind of formal, but straightforward. By formality, if you're thinking, again, in this paper, we will discuss the ramifications of blah, 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 blah. No, don't do that. At the top, say, here, express your main findings, your most interesting thing that can grab that reader. So I think the answer is that you can be formal without being stuffy. You can be respectful, as you should be, without being stilted or academic, if that answers the question.
Yeah, +1. There is nothing wrong with treating people with dignity and respect, and good manners go a long way. Plus, you'll make your mom happy. but you can still sound like a human being.
Exactly.
Let's see, another one here. Allison asks, how do you overcome resistance to clear, plain language? I'm a former journalist who now edits academics, and my guidance is very often rejected. And 28 people are plussing up this one. So for all of us who are working with maybe a doctor in the front, a PhD at the end, or an MD, folks who are doing something that's obviously incredibly important and useful to all of us, but writing is not their first gift. How do you help those folks?
Yeah.
How do you
Allison,
engage with those folks?
bless you. My heart goes out to you. I hear this question a lot. As much as you can, without getting fired, try to push back, try to explain why that they should be edited into a more straightforward, colloquial, active voice, no utilize, no productize type of writing. Some of them will get it. Some will not. And then I say, pick your battles. You know, you want to keep your job, pick your battles. If the writer just insists on not being edited, you did your best, go fight another day. Do try to hire in the organization that you can persuade the managers, the decision makers that that's not good writing. The better you are. And again, if they can show me that they write that way and they have a lot of readers, then, you know, I bet they don't. I bet they're writing for some narrow publication that hardly anybody's going to read. And if they're satisfied with that, pick your battle and move on.
So I'll offer a personal note in here, gang. I think many of you know my wife works at the Environmental Protection Agency, so she works with a lot of very seasoned scientists. And one of the things that they've done in their office, she works in the comm shop, is they started a book club, and they've started looking at folks who write about science, technology, the environment, who are incredibly accessible. The folks the comms team like reading. And they challenge the scientists. They have these book clubs to actually say, how could you write? Who do you like to read? You mentioned Oliver Sacks as a, for instance, Chuck. It's a great way to start a conversation. Rather than talking at people, find a way to talk with them when you're focusing on something like a book. So highly recommend that. It's a winning strategy for her, is actually getting these folks to sort of get into the discipline of thinking about communications. Because at the end of the day, we're all communicators. It's such a requirement in the 21st century on some level, right? All right. One question coming in here from Naeem. This might need to be our last one before we go to office hours, and we'll take as many as we can. What if, in context, we're focusing on action versus the doer, Chuck? And that's a challenge sometimes about writing in passive voice.
I see. Yeah. Sometimes you can, yeah. A local man was shot and killed last night. All right, that's passive voice, partly because we don't know who the doer was. You could say someone shot and killed a local man last night. It sounds a little funny. In this case, the you know, I think it's worth it to put the focus on the poor victim of this and put that first. I think I guess a sample. You know, the entire operation was turned on its head by Margaret's decision. That might be, I can see what you might argue, rather than Margaret's decision turned the entire operation on its head. I would write it that way just because I strongly prefer active voice. But I could see where, because what you're really trying to emphasize is this big effect that it had, maybe that would justify it. It's a matter of taste. I would urge you to think about writing active voice. I would write that sentence in